The Duval Rundown, driven by Jacksonville Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Westside, home of the lifetime warranty.
Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Duval Rundown. I'm Hayes Carline. Pleased to be joined with Ryan O'Halloran, who's good enough to fill in for us on Monday. A little switcheroo, but certainly excited to get Ryan's thoughts. Ryan, good morning. How you doing?
I'm good, Hayes. Two quick things. Back in the day when we were beat writers, we used to count the months until the draft or the offseason program. And January used to last forever.
Yeah.
But now we're already at February 2. And now I'm in a good mood because I just saw the trailer for The Devil Wears Prada 2.
Ah, here we go.
So
yeah,
now we talk about that when that comes out in May.
Yeah, sounds good. The first one was fantastic. So you did a really good comprehensive look at the defense. We did the offense last week. I would encourage you guys to go check out Ryan's work at jacksonville.com and follow him at Ryan O'Halloran. So, Ryan, let's focus on the defense and the numbers that you broke down today. And, again, that's been published, right? People can go see that? Yeah. Kind of like the offense, a lot of revealing things about – particularly, I thought, for Anthony Campanile and the job he did. But as you went through it and broke everything down, what were a couple key takeaways that you had?
Yeah, I'll give you two, one on the positive and one that should be addressed. As the first one was the takeaways. It was a story all of training camp. They had 9 all of 2024. Well, they had 9 by the end of September this year, and it was constant. They were they're 29th in turnover differential in 2024. They were third best this year, plus 13, including the playoffs. They forced 31 takeaways. Devin Lloyd led the way with Antonio Johnson, 5 interceptions out of 22. And to me, it just seemed like these weren't garbage time takeaways. I mean, they made important plays by taking the ball away and setting their offense up. The other thing that I think is going to be a storyline, which we've already talked about, is their pass rush just wasn't very good. The NFL had them at about 26% blitz rate, which is 5 or more, middle of the pack. But I had Josh Hines-Allen with a team-high 65 disruptions, combination of sacks, knocks down, pressures. The next closest player was 32. Can't happen again. They got to address it either inside with the defensive tackle or outside getting more from the edge. So those are the two main things, and we can dig into the run defense. But if I'm the Jaguars, the pass rush has got to be a priority.
Yeah, and it was one of the few areas of the team that Liam Cohen publicly called out at times this past season, where he was like, we're just not getting there. So one other thing that you had in there in regards to Hines-Allen that I thought reflected maybe a stronger season than what the numbers would indicate is he drew 5 penalties, which normally those are going to be 10-yard variety penalties. Obviously, I would assume all of them probably were. So that's an additional 50 yards. But I thought that was interesting that Hines-Allen, I think by far drew the most penalties of any Jaguar defender, correct?
Yeah, he was the other one with more than 2. And, let's say you equate a penalty to a sack. Probably not everyone, but let's go 2.5 sacks. Well, then he's at 11.5 for the season, and now you're getting into that elite range where he's been before. And I think that it was the first 7 games of experimentation with Hines-Allen. Okay, how do you get him going? How do you get him away from there's a chip? Do you stunt them? Do you line them up inside? Do you line Walker next to him? So I think they'll have a better grasp of how to get Josh going earlier this season, because the first 7 games he had half a sack. I mean, we all had that note ready for him that he had set the individual franchise record. Well, it didn't come until the Charger game, week 9.
Yeah, and that was a surprise. The other thing that I took away from this, and you pointed out the dramatic improvement in a variety of areas. You mentioned the takeaways going from 9 takeaways to 31, minus 15 in turnover margin to plus 13, just staggering. And then in yards and points, they were 11th in yards, 8th in points allowed. The previous year, they were 31st in yards, 27th in points. Boy, Anthony Campanile might be a star because, again, I look at their talent. Yeah. I don't see anywhere in here where you would look at their talent and say, this should be one of the best defenses in the NFL. They have some good players, but it doesn't, it certainly doesn't seem like on the level of what some of these juggernaut defenses have in terms of talent. Anthony Campanile, I mean, how impressive was, in your opinion, what he was able to do his first year as a defensive coordinator?
First year in Jacksonville, first year overall calling the plays. I thought he was very impressive. You never really – they won the Chief game, but they gave up a lot of yards. And then they had one bad quarter in the Houston collapse. But there aren't a lot of other cases where you say they were overmatched. They gave up yards in some games because they were blowing teams out. They're just, hey, just keep everything in front of you. The fact that they improved so greatly in the run game, that means that's coaching, that's scheme, and that's players taking the coaching well. And one thing that stood out about this run defense is they faced the fewest attempts in the league. They faced the fewest percentage of run plays because they had a lead.
Yeah.
Well, when they ran it, yes, they stopped it, and that was the first time in team history they won that rush defense title. But I thought Campanile, when you're leaning on guys like Austin Johnson, DeJuan Smoot, Matt Dickerson, 1-year contract guys, that means you identified the right guys and then you coached them the right way, got them to play well. So you never know how the coordinator circle turns in terms of head coaches. But if the Jaguars can even approach this kind of record in 2026, Campanile will be at the top of the list.
Yeah, I certainly would agree with that. And the other thing that I thought was impressive, particularly Campanile being a first-time defensive coordinator, is you do a great job of breaking down the intervals of the season. And through the first 4 games, the defense looks great. Then you get to game 8, and the numbers had really plummeted. That's in the Seattle Rams, in that portion of the season. But then it comes back and gets really strong to close out the year. So I admire the fact that it started strong. They hit a lull, but he was able to keep them afloat and then get them back to playing really strong defense in the second half of the year when obviously they went on that tremendous win streak.
Yeah, in that second quarter there, they faced Patrick Mahomes, Matthew Stafford, and arguably Sam Darnold played the best game of any quarterback against the Jags this year. So, they sort of had their way, hit some big passes. But, one thing I pushed back on during the last half of the season during this winning streak was, well, look who they're playing. Well, I look who they're playing. I look how they matched them. They gave Justin Herbert no chance. Right. They held Bo Nix relatively in check. These are 2 playoff quarterbacks. They did what they're supposed to do twice against Tennessee. So that was the other thing that was probably impressive about the mindset of this team and also the approach of these coaches. You can say you don't take anybody lightly. That's human nature. But this team drilled down pretty good for those last 7 games when they won all of them.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about some free agent possibilities on that side of the football. But before we do that, let's say hello to Jacob Simons. Jacob helping us out on Duval Rundown as always, the brains behind the operation. And we certainly appreciate Jacob's contributions. Jacob, let's say hello to our sponsor, please.
Baloo for Jacksonville Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram Westside, your locally owned commercial truck headquarters and proud partner of the Jaguars. For hard-to-find ProMaster vans or commercial trucks for your fleet, visit jaxwest.com today.
So let's focus in a little bit now on moving forward with the defense. And, you're in the room with Gladstone, Baselli, Cohen, Campanile. What are your suggestions in terms of guys you want to keep, guys that you would be in the market for, whether it's free agency or the draft, and talk specifically about Buster Brown, because I think he's really an interesting candidate here in terms of guessing what his market might be, who he, how many clubs probably aren't even going to consider him because of their scheme. That one seems really interesting.
It is, and you sort of, and I assume we'll be invited into that meeting.
Of course,
because we know what we're talking about. But you sort of divide it into, okay, what's the pie in the sky meeting, and what's the realistic meeting? Let's go into the realistic meeting. That doesn't include Devin Lloyd. We talked about him last week. I don't think it includes Greg Newsome. I think that's going to be mutual. So that leaves Buster Brown, I think, is the number one priority for in-house free agents, because if you're letting Newsome walk, you're down a corner. You have Travis Hunter, who I think that's where he'll play, but he's coming off an injury. So I think Brown becomes a priority, because I like Jerry Jones more as a jack of all trades, who can, play some dime, pitch in at the nickel if Jordan Lewis is banged up. So with Brown, was injured early in the season, but one thing I liked about Buster is on his interceptions, he showed pretty good recognition of what the play was going to be. And I asked him about a couple of those. He said, I saw this split in this formation from this side of the field on this down, and it clicked in my head, I'm going to jump this route. So I think he's an ascending player. Last year he played 794 snaps, which led all corners for the Jaguars. And where's his takeaways here? He had 2 interceptions. So he was around the football in addition to those interceptions. So I think it's critical. I'll say critical for the Jaguars to re-sign him, because if you let him go, then that creates another spot. Fill a hole with somebody you like and then you can work the margins on some other guys.
What's your guess on contract for Buster Brown?
Yeah, I mean, he's young enough where he could probably get a 4-year deal, which seems to be the trend for players now. Don't give those monster term deals. If he's viewed as a number 2 corner, do you start with the Jordan Lewis contract? That was $10 million a year. Probably wouldn't go that high, but if you get down to 7 or so, I think Buster, if he hits the market, is going to have a market. And so if you can lock him up, make sure he doesn't, talk to anybody, I think you may be able to get a decent price. But I think they gotta be really proactive in re-signing Brown.
If Brown gets to the market and one of the other 31 offers him something stupid and he signs elsewhere, as you go through the position now, so I agree, Travis Hunter would be corner 1. You do have Jordan Lewis, you have Jarian Jones, but could you see a scenario if they lose Brown where one of those first 4 picks, I don't think it'd be the second rounder unless there's a guy there that they just absolutely love that they can't believe fell to the mid-50s. But with the second or the 3/3, is one of those a corner? And do you then go and sign a second wave veteran corner? How do you think they will play it if, in fact, Buster Brown leaves in free agency?
Yeah, and I'll probably give you the same answer even if he stays. It would probably be both. It would be, hey, that second wave of free agency, which is third week of March. See if you can find a 1-year deal guy, but then in the draft, no later than the 3rd round, because how about this is where the Hunter thing comes back into play. Let's say you get banged up at receiver for a couple weeks, and they got to move him over there to play a little bit, but then you got to play somebody else at corner. So it should be a part of their night 2 draft plan to draft a corner, even if they re-sign Brown, and even if they add a veteran, because the Jordan Lewis coming off that torn ligament, you got to have a little contingency plan there as well.
Yeah, it certainly will be interesting to see how they go about it. Super Bowl, I can't really get all that excited about this one. I almost feel like bad about that, but it's because I love the sport. And the NFL is by far my favorite thing that we have in this country from a sports standpoint. But boy, Seahawks Patriots, I can't get excited about it. But give us a couple thoughts and try and perk me up on this matchup if you can.
I can't get there yet, but I said that last week. I'll probably obviously I'll watch the game. I think. But the lead-up stuff doesn't interest me anymore. I've been fortunate to cover a lot of them. That would obviously be different if I was there. But to me, it's okay. This Patriots offense was really bad in the first 3 playoff games, but they also played in really bad weather. Can they find ways to, sort of probe this Seahawks defense, which we saw in person? Jaguars had no answers for them.
They're awesome.
Yeah. So, and then also, I think the best player in the game overall is Smith and Jigba. Yeah. And so how do the Patriots cover him? I mean, that's getting into the X and O weeds. But you're right, I always we've seen this matchup before. It was the Malcolm Butler game.
Yeah.
And so, that was a long time ago, but yeah, I think there's still Patriots fatigue, even though it's been a couple years since they were in there. But I'll turn it on at 6:30 on Sunday, and I like the Seahawks to win the game. I just think their offense has a little bit more firepower, and Seattle will win its second Super Bowl.
Yeah, I like it. Seattle comfortably. I mean, I think you could see a game 24-13. I do think both defenses, the two best units in the game are each team's defense. And Seattle's defense, I think, is going to just maul New England. Maybe Drake May is able to do something with his legs. We've seen that be a pivotal point in this tournament run for New England. So maybe he's able to burn them a few times, that way and frustrate them. But New England's weapons, I think, are terrible for a Super Bowl team.
Yeah.
And, again, I just think Seattle's going to dominate them in terms of, what on that matchup, their defense versus New England's offense. And I think the Patriots will have success somewhat defensively. But to your point, Smith and Jigba has been the best receiver in the league all season. He's going to – a bad game for him is like 6 catches for 75 yards.
Yeah.
So he's probably going to be somewhere around 8 for $115 and a touchdown. In Seattle, and you got to give Darnold credit. I mean, he has really turned into a quality starter, and coming off probably the best game of his career in the NFC title game, where he had to go step for step with Stafford. So, I mean, I kind of think Seattle might roll them. I definitely would take Seattle and give the points.
Pete Prisco was on your show with Frank on Friday, and he said he sort of teased a story he was doing. Who has the edge at every starting position? And he had Seattle,
the starters,
in the teens maybe.
I think he said of the first 20, I think he said 15 were Seahawks.
Yeah, so that falls in line with what you're thinking and what I'm thinking. We're both picking Seattle, and one thing that jumped out is Clint Kubiak had guys running wide open in that NFC title game. He's going to be the coach of the Raiders. Good luck to him. But yeah, I think that's where, and then also Will Campbell. They don't give him enough help at left tackle for the Patriots. So I think the pass rush for Seattle is going to get there. And then Drake May is nursing that injured right shoulder, which they're really downplaying, but he was on the injury report this week, coming into the trip to San Francisco. So, but yeah, I mean, it's the Super Bowl, so we'll watch, but there's not a lot of appeal to it right now.
Yeah, and it seems like for New England, Ramondre Stevenson isn't running through the Seahawks front. Yeah. It's not happening. Now, maybe Henderson hits a big one. It just seems like the Patriots need a lot of low probability plays to hit for them to win this game.
Yeah, and I think Vrabel's going to try and steal possession.
Yeah, and the other thing, it's like it feels like we're too late. Darnold's now played too well for too long to expect him to have the no touchdown 4 turnover game. Because that's almost what I keep coming back to as well. Maybe Sam Darnold melts down. But, boy, it doesn't – then I find myself – it's like, I'm not giving him enough credit. He's now been good for the last 2 years pretty consistently. So to expect him to just melt down probably isn't, in the cards. I wouldn't – he may not play great, but I'd be surprised if he just kills Seattle.
Yeah, 18-27 for 2 touchdowns and 275, 260, 270, and then if he throws it to Jackson, he'll win the MVP. So yeah, by all means, let's watch.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll certainly do a wrap up of everything involving the Super Bowl next week when we catch back up with you. And we'll continue to look ahead at what will be a very interesting offseason. The Senior Bowl is behind us, which is always a good first step of the draft process, and it won't be long until prospects are up in Indianapolis for the combine. We'll see who elects to do what in terms of drills, but we know these guys, the Jaguars, they don't care. which is great. That they are obviously all about production. So I don't know that we'll learn much about the Jaguars, but we will learn a little bit more about the quality of the draft class, which doesn't seem to be great. But it might be okay for the Jaguars for their needs. I mean, it does seem like it's pretty heavy on linemen. Corner is pretty good. So while there aren't the sizzle positions necessarily, quarterback, running back, receiver, it does seem like for what the Jaguars need, maybe it sets up pretty well.
Yeah, and you see mock drafts coming out now for the first round. Yeah, I always click on it. Okay, where is the team I come? Well, they don't have a first round pick, so I don't care about those anymore. The Senior Bowl, don't recognize any of the players. Got to bone up on those guys. I didn't get my measurements though, even though I was watching on TV. But yeah, it's that's going to be the challenge for the Jaguars fans and the Jaguars media. Okay, let's really start digging in on these day two guys. Players 50 to 150 that we're not familiar with, but that's going to be on the Jags board because let's face it, they even if they do move up a couple picks in the second round, they're not going to take a big swing and move up like 20 spots.
I agree. I think and I think it's going to be hard in this draft to maneuver around. I don't think there's going to be that many prospects that teams fall in love with because it just doesn't. There was only 40 underclassmen in the draft.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, but obviously we've got some time to break all that down. Ryan, give us a preview of what's coming up this week on Jacksonville.com.
Sure. Column from Alabama, Florida basketball. That's up online right now. It'll be in tomorrow's paper. Then,
what a game for the Gators.
Great game. And then, I mean, Alabama had no chance.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's been the story. Like he is kicking Nate Oates' butt every time he sees him now. He's won his last 5. He's averaging over 100 points in those 5 wins. And the average margin of victory is like 16.5 points.
Yeah. So I'll write about them later in the week because they go to Texas A&M Saturday night, which could be first place on the line in the SEC. And we'll have a Super Bowl pick, but I'm going to knock on wood here that hopefully a little bit slower week for us.
Yeah. Good stuff. Well, Ryan, we certainly appreciate you stepping in for Frank on a Monday, and we'll look forward to catching back up with you in your normal slot next week on Wednesday, but certainly appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.
All right, thanks, buddy.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching Duval Rundown. We will be back on Wednesday with Frank Frangie. Until then, have a wonderful start to your week.